Hey, it's Kevin Syracuse from Sports Hour. We're live here at the Bills game.
Did you get that?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome into our 9th and final episode of Sports Hour for the semester and second ever on Zoom. I am your host, Kevin Syracuse, with all of our NFL analysts, minus Jared Marsh. He had class tonight, so he couldn't make it. So we have Aaron Sember, Trevor Howard, and Sarah Gordon with us. So we are going to have a nice big round table here, or round laptop Zoom call, as this is our first ever time being able to talk to this many people. So as much as it stinks that we can't be on campus tonight, it is pretty cool that we can all have a conversation here in different parts of the state. So how you guys doing?
Pretty well.
Awesome. Doing great.
Pretty good.
All right. So I'm doing great too, because the Bills are 8-3 and they got it done yesterday. And again, I know I've said this in the past, and I wish this wasn't the theme every week, but a win's a win, because that was a very ugly second half. But the Bills pulled it together when they needed to, and they stopped Herbert and the Chargers and took them down 27-17.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Herbert is, like, he's been looking well all this season, and you could even make the remark right now that with Burrow out, he's probably one of the main candidates for Offensive Rookie of the Year. But I think the Bills defense just swarmed him, made him uncomfortable. And like you said, a lot of these weeks, everything was looking pretty ugly for your Bills, but a win's a win.
Yeah, the Bills have a tendency they have this formula lately, especially, that they take the lead, they have decent, significant lead in the first half. And then once you get to the third quarter, they start letting them creep back up on you. And it's terrifying to watch, honestly, because it's like a constant. They've been doing this every week, it seems like, where they let them come back. And thankfully, for the most part, they've held it together and have been able to pull out a win. But they just need to, in the third quarter is definitely their worst quarter. So they just got to pull it together there, got to figure out how to stop the opposing team from gaining back the points that they pulled ahead with.
Yeah, I mean, the second half was kind of a mess for Buffalo. I remember seeing some bizarre stat. It was like 3 turnovers on 7 snaps at one point in the second half. And that's just something that you cannot do, especially holding on to a 10-point lead in your own stadium. Like, COVID or not, fans or not, you got to hold on to a lead in your home building.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so to bounce off what you guys were just saying. So this is what happened to the Bills in the fourth quarter yesterday. So 3 turnovers in 7 plays. They had penalties called on them. A couple of them were like very bad calls, in my opinion. Like Zach Moss just literally tossed the ball and they called him for unsportsmanlike conduct. But it is what it is. So, yeah, 6 penalties called and Hail Mary. They allowed another Hail Mary. Not Murray. But that all happened in the fourth quarter, and they still won by 10 points. So that's like good and bad. It's like, wow, that's really good to be able to play that bad and still win. But at the same time, it's like, that's really bad to be having that many mistakes in week 12, So I think the bright side is, like you're saying, Aaron, the defense stepped up and the offense has been the strong suit all year. The offense has been carrying us. So it was good to see the defense step up and the special teams step up. And the mistakes on offense can be fixed, Like, they usually don't fumble. Allen doesn't really throw too many interceptions. He's really cleaned up his game in that aspect. So I think I'm not too concerned because we've seen the offense prove themselves. Now the defense and special teams prove themselves. Now they just have to all put it together. And it's going to be tough next week. They have San Francisco on Monday night in Arizona because of the new COVID guidelines in Santa Clara. So that was just announced today. They will be in Arizona at the Cardinal Stadium, actually. So, you can't take the 49ers too lightly because they're 5-6, but they were in the Super Bowl last year and they've been decimated with injuries. And those guys are starting to come back now. So it's going to be a tough game, and the Bills cannot – if they play like they did yesterday, next Monday, I don't know if they can win because the 49ers are a good team. You have to play a full 4-quarter game.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to say about the Chargers. Their game decision-making has been horrible. And they could have easily been a 7-win team instead of 3 wins now? They easily could have been just because of the way Herbert and the offense have been playing. And so I don't know what the deal is with personnel with Anthony Lynn as the coach. I mean, I like Anthony Lynn as a head coach, and I don't think firing him is going to change anything. So it's just crazy how underwhelming the Chargers season has been. That's for sure.
I feel like the Chargers have a history of playing second half games like this, like even with Rivers and when North Turner was the head coach. Like, they just don't know how to play in the clutch in the fourth quarter when you need to score. They'll call some stupid play that loses them 10 yards, then they'll get a penalty, or then they'll somehow miss an easy field goal. I remember seeing like 2 weeks ago, there was no time left on the clock in the Chargers and Raiders game, and they still managed to lose. So, I mean, I think they've just been doing this for years. It's just kind of the Charger way.
So moving on now, like I said, the Bills are 8-3 and still holding on to first place because the Dolphins are right there behind us as they improved to 7-4 yesterday with a 20-3 win over the winless Jets. The Jets are just in a league of their own. They are terrible. Adam Gase obviously going to get fired. I think they're just trying to keep him so they can keep losing because he's obviously tearing that organization apart. So might as well just keep him for the rest of the year, go 0-16 and get Trevor Lawrence because that's all you have to play for right now.
With the Jets, like, obviously they've been doing really poorly all year. But the thing is like they had Darnold back and they had a lot of their offensive weapons. And for the first time, they had Darnold with some of these young guys like Mims, and I don't know the other guy. I think his name is Smith. But they were really excited to get Darnold with these weapons because he's been like their receiving core and whatnot have been decimated. So I heard like all throughout the game, the commentators were like, "Oh, he finally gets his weapons back," but he played. That loss was basically his fault. He couldn't control the game, and Fitzpatrick just used his Harvard education to get that win. That was a game decision game for Fitzpatrick, that's for sure.
You guys have any thoughts on that, or do you want to just move on to the next one, sticking with the AFC, Arizona and New England?
All I got to say about the Jets is, man, they just stink. They're just so bad. I think is Trevor Lawrence a junior in Clemson this year?
I believe so, yeah.
And man, he might just go for another season at Clemson because he doesn't know what he's going to get himself into if the Jets pick him number 1 overall. I think if the Jets pick Lawrence, it's just going to ruin his career.
Think about all the Jets prior: Sanchez, Darnold. Now,
Geno Smith
had a good respective line and a team, he'd still be a starter in this league for sure. Kind of reminds me of a guy who's going to start for Baltimore, RG3. If RG3 never got hurt and had a good team around him, he'd still be a starter as well.
Definitely. And like, if you remember the name Geno Smith, that was another one
that too.
Who they could have had. But I mean, they've been through coach after coach, quarterback after quarterback. It's just the Jets are known for ruining careers, and I don't think the Jets is a good place for Lawrence to go.
Sarah, I don't mean to cut you off. I'll give you the mic here for the Patriots game. The last thing I'll have to say about that is it's going to be interesting to see what the Dolphins decide to do when Tua comes back from his injury. Do you go with Tua or do you go with Fitz? Because I think they're better with Fitzpatrick, but they say Tua's their guy. I hope they're not rushing him. Well, actually, I do hope they're rushing him because maybe that means more losses. But anyways, we got to get to the next game. So, Sarah, what do you think about this Patriots game? Because the Cardinals were, playing pretty well. They beat the Bills. The Bills should have beat them, but either way, they were 6-4.
Mm.
Now they dropped to 6-5. New England suddenly is 5-6. It's not over with for New England. You can never count New England out. But I'm pretty comfortable with a 3-game lead with 5 to go. But still, the Patriots are still hanging in there at 5-6.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this definitely helps keep their playoff hopes alive, which is, a little terrifying if you're a Bills fan. But like you said, we still have that 3-game lead up there. But yeah, to be honest, I thought that Arizona was probably going to come on top just based on how New England's been playing up to this point. Like, they haven't been terrible, but, because they're still New England. But without Tom Brady there, they just kind of had this, clearly their record shows it. They haven't had quite the same momentum as in the past. So I thought, and due to Arizona right now, I thought they were going to come out with the win, but, New England came back and the stats won't show it too much because Cam Newton only had 84 yards and 2 interceptions actually, while Kyler Murray had 170 and 1 interception. But they were still able to somehow pull it out on top, and we'll have to wait and see how the standings show because they still have time to catch up if they really keep up with the wins.
Yeah, I feel like for Arizona, I feel like Murray is still experiencing some pain in his shoulder. I don't feel like he heard it last week, and I don't feel like they want to admit it because obviously they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, he's hurt, because everyone's going to – they try to exploit things. But you could tell he wasn't comfortable at all. You could tell by the way – especially by the way his stat line showed. He wasn't himself. He didn't really – he ran not as much as he would used to. I don't think he's – with a lot of players, when they have injuries, they try to fight through it. But I don't feel like he needs to make sure his shoulder's fully recovered again before he can continue his what was and probably still will be a very good season.
I was absolutely shocked to see the Cardinals lose that game. It was crazy.
I was going to say, we got to get to the next game. So, Trevor, I don't mean to cut you off, but I will give you the next one because it is your team. Unfortunately, they did not come out on top, and this was Tennessee and Indianapolis, and it was the Derrick Henry show once again.
Yeah, it was ugly. I mean, coming off of a huge win at home in overtime against the Packers, you'd only think that the momentum would just keep going and keep going. But then later in the week, you find out that Buckner tested positive for COVID, and then Jonathan Taylor tested positive, and then Danico Autry tested positive, and then you got Quentin Nelson, probably one of the best offensive guards in the league, who's playing at 50%. Anthony Costanzo, left tackle, goes down with an MCL, and Ryan Kelly's out, the center, with a neck injury. So I'm like, what's going on here? Like, they got to step up. Run defense was not good at all yesterday, as Henry got 178 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns and led fantasy football everywhere in rushing. And it was just, and coverages in the secondary too, like leaving A.J. Brown wide open for a 70-yard touchdown off a slant route. Like, the Colts are missing a few pieces on defense, and it's like they don't remember how to play. It was rough. And then as soon as Costanzo went down, who was their left tackle, Rivers was just panicking the entire second half, and he just wasn't there. But the only positive about this game as a Colts fan is it was nice to finally see T.Y. get his first touchdown of the year.
And I don't mean to cut you guys off, but we just got to keep this moving. So sticking with the same division here, going back to Thursday on Thanksgiving, Houston and Detroit. Detroit's another just not a good team, but I think a lot of that had to do with Matt Patricia, who was gone a couple days later. I think that was Saturday they fired him. So 2 days later, and they just seem to really not like Patricia there in Detroit. As I feel like the Lions can be a really good team. We've always said how Stafford is underrated, and they've surrounded him with some better pieces. But I think Patricia was bringing them down. So they're 4-7 now. I think it's a little too late for this year, but I think we are going to see the Lions win a few more games down the stretch here.
I honestly think that Houston is a 4-7 team, but they really shouldn't be. They're a 4-7 team that's definitely rising. I think Deshaun Watson is criminally underrated in the AFC. And I think going into next week against Indianapolis, I think that's going to be a good game to watch. Never count out Houston, especially right now. They do have a possibility. I believe they take on Jacksonville one more time, and they play Tennessee again. They play the Colts this week. They could possibly win 4 out of their next 5 games, finish 8-8 or 9-7, somewhere around there.
And rounding out the division now, so Cleveland and Jacksonville. Jacksonville is really not a team they have to worry about. The Browns beat them 27-25 yesterday, and more importantly, Cleveland is 8-3.
8-3.
And Sarah, what do you guys think? What do you guys make of the Cleveland Browns are 8-3? Like I never thought I'd hear those words together.
I actually have a few problems with the Cleveland Browns because they don't feed Nick Chubb more. It seems like it's 3rd and goal on the 1 yard line. Oh, we'll have Kareem Hunt come in. Yes, I can't lie to you. Kareem Hunt, obviously his time in Kansas City, I loved Kareem Hunt until he got with all that drama. Obviously, we all know that.
Yep.
He signed with Cleveland on a 1-year deal. I get that. Nick Chubb last year had 1,200 scrimmage yards rushing. He's an amazing, early, and he could play all 3 downs. I don't understand why. One, I don't understand why the Browns signed Hunt to begin with because they didn't need him, and 2, it's really taking away from Chubb's productivity as a running back, and because obviously in this league now, any running back, you need to learn how to catch passes. And that's obviously what Hunt's for, because he's more of a receiving back as opposed to Chubb's down and gritty runs. But I just don't understand that, they're like 2 workhorses, but they don't really mold well together. That's just my one problem with the Browns.
I agree. I definitely agree. And I think that Baker Mayfield needs to take more deep shots down the field. I think they'd be legit because I don't think he has a lot of confidence in his own arm. But if he gets some of that confidence, he can hit Jarvis and he can hit OBJ, and they can be.
OBJ's out with a ACL.
Oh, he's out. Yeah. Okay. So just hit Jarvis.
Rashad Higgins,
right?
Jones, whoever,
Get some confidence in your own arm, and then you can look like a legit 8-3 team.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have a couple minutes here, so I'll give you this one.
Okay.
City and Tampa Bay. The Chiefs took this one 27-24. I thought it was going to be a lot more based on that first half. I mean, Mahomes threw for 360 yards. Tyreek, 13 catches, 269 yards, and 3 touchdowns, over 50 fantasy points. It looks like the Chiefs are unstoppable, but at the same time, the Buccaneers did come back a little bit, and they did make it close, but still, Chiefs are 10-1 and just looking so good right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I want to talk about. Tyreek Hill. I mean, that's some insane numbers right there with the 269 yards, like you said, 3 touchdowns. It's just showing how much of a powerhouse Kansas City really is. And they almost pulled the Bills on letting the Buccaneers come back. And you can't do that with Tom Brady because he could definitely win back those points and pull out a win. But thankfully the Chiefs were able to stay on top and pull away with that win. But yeah, they're just showing that they really are a powerhouse in this league, and they're definitely going to be one to beat. And who knows, they'll probably end up going to the Super Bowl. We'll have to wait and see.
I just want to thank Patrick Mahomes, too, because he's my fantasy quarterback and got me like 25 points in the first half. So, yeah, thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, real quick. I don't know what's good with Tom Brady and the deep ball, but something's not right with him. He's been playing really terrible lately when it comes to, deep ball passes.
Yeah. They had him with 2 interceptions too last night.
Yeah, it's ugly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Brady's looking old.
He's getting there. He's getting up there.
So we have a minute left. So real quick, guys, the NFL just announced before we came on here that the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game got pushed back again to Wednesday night. So we have Wednesday night football at 8:00.
Woo!
Sure. I'm going to go Pittsburgh because Baltimore is just decimated with COVID cases. So I think Pittsburgh wins here by a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Pittsburgh, but I wouldn't count out RG3. I would say it's probably going to be a 10-point game in Pittsburgh's favor.
I got Pittsburgh by 17.
I'll go Pittsburgh by 2 touchdowns. I'll go for that.
All right. Well, that will do it for the AFC segment, and we will be back in a minute here for the NFC segment. And welcome back to the NFC segment here. And while we were on break, we just learned that Texans wide receiver Will Fuller has been suspended 6 games for PED use. And the ironic thing here is that he had 6 catches for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns on Thanksgiving. So he will be done for the year. And Trevor, we were saying can't count out the Texans. You still can't count them out, but that's a big blow to this team.
Oh, it is for sure. It's not like it's not like back in the old days when they could just rely on a guy like Andre Johnson. Those wide receivers don't come around too often. And Will Fuller, like you said, had an amazing game on Thanksgiving. So now who do you think they're going to turn to? I believe Randall Cobb is injured. Will Fuller's out. Who do you think that they're going to go to?
Probably Brandon Cooks. I mean, they put Kenny Stills on waivers. I'm hoping that the Bills will pick him up because John Brown's out with that knee injury. He'd be a receiver. But yeah, I don't know about Houston. I bet they're wishing they had DeAndre Hopkins right now.
Oh man. Thanks, Bill O'Brien. You're awesome.
So to the NFC here. Sticking with Thanksgiving Day, actually, Washington and Dallas and the football team just dominated here. It was pretty close. It was 17-13 at the half, but then Washington just took over. Antonio Gibson led the way, 115 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the football team moved to 4-7, and the Cowboys are 3-8. So Washington and the Giants are tied for first right now. We'll be talking about the Giants next. But yeah, 4 wins. That's all you need right now to be a division leader.
NFC least, Kevin. That's what you have to call it. It's the NFC least. They're going to be taking away a playoff spot from a division like the NFC West, where they have 4 solid teams. And probably one of them is going to get home field, at least in the wild card round, whether that's the Giants or the football team, the Eagles or the Cowboys, if they decide to turn it around. But the only thing you can say about that division is the NFC least.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously as a Chiefs fan, I have a lot of experience with Alex Smith as a quarterback, 5 seasons. And the whole problem with, I've said this many times, the whole problem with Smith is that he's a great player, but if they're losing, luckily they weren't in that situation when they played Dallas because they won with Antonio Gibson. But if Alex Smith is needed to have a comeback victory, he's not that type of player. He's a smart game decision quarterback. So that's what I'm worried about. If they play a team that is of a winning record and will probably come out striking with the passing game, whoever they're going to play, because if it's either the football team or the Giants, because the Giants also have a lot of problems, but I don't think they'll probably, sadly, whoever's going to make, who's ever going to win the division in the NFC East is probably going to be a first-round exit.
So, Sarah, that being said, going over to the Giants and Bengals now, what do you think about that game and then just how it affects the division as a whole? Because, again, the Giants are tied for first, which is just so weird to think because you just think the Giants, they're bad. And it's like, oh, wait, we're in first. And now they just announced today that Daniel Jones is going to miss some time with that hamstring injury. So I don't know. It's just so crazy to think about. And the other cool thing is that Alex Smith literally almost lost his leg and his life. So he went from being on rock bottom to potentially leading his team to a division title. So, like, that's really cool. So just what do you make about that Giants-Bengals game and then just the division as a whole?
I mean, definitely both teams are definitely struggling, obviously, as we can see with the records and all that. And then having Daniel Jones get hurt is not good for the Giants, as they're leading, like you said. And he's actually one of my fantasy. I keep losing all my fantasy quarterbacks right now because I have Drew Lock as one of my other one, and he's out for COVID. So, but obviously the season is very different, and yeah, it's just not always the best. But yeah, so that's going to be big for the Giants going forward, losing Daniel Jones, and it was a close game. They were tied going into the third quarter, going into the second half, and the Giants held on to the win with a field goal and touchdown or 2 or 3 field goals, in the last second half, while Bengals had a touchdown. But we're just it's like you said, this division is so out of whack, and it's just gonna be really weird to see what it ends up being and how it affects other teams throughout the entire league, because you're just going to be having some mismatched games, since a lot of these teams are actually they're struggling. So it's definitely going to be very interesting going forward to see who wins. But yeah.
Now going over to the next game, Minnesota and Carolina. This one was a really good game, and the Vikings came out on top 28-27. So Trevor, I'm going to give you this one. What do you make of this game here? Kirk Cousins, 34-45, 307 yards, 3 touchdowns. And Justin Jefferson, the new number 1 with Adam Thielen being on the COVID list, he had 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. And, I mean, that trade right there, talk about a great trade. The Bills get Stephon Diggs, and they get Justin Jefferson. Both teams win that deal. I mean, it's been great for both teams.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Justin Jefferson's looking like kind of the newer version of Stephon Diggs, but we got to address the elephant in the room here. Jeremy Chin, the rookie safety for the Carolina Panthers, returning 2 fumbles for a touchdown, and they still lost the game. That's the thing that blew my mind. Like, usually in the NFL, and especially around these times, like, if you have the most turnovers, it's so hard to lose that game. And I believe the Vikings had 3 turnovers, and I don't know, maybe the Panthers had right around the same, but it was close the whole way through. And the Panthers defense stepped up, especially in the second and third quarter. But then when the fourth quarter came around, Kirk Cousins just became electric, and the Vikings ended up on top. I think with the way that the Vikings have been playing over the past couple of weeks, you wonder, how did they lose all these games in the beginning of the year? And if they just won all the games in the beginning of the year they were projected to win, we could be talking about a fight for the top of the NFC North between the Packers and the Vikings. But overall, I'm saying the Panthers defense is going to be bright in the future. It's just going through some growing pains right now. But as for the Vikings, man, if they just had a better start to the season, they are a playoff team.
Yeah, let's not talk about Joey Sly. Oh, let's also talk about Joey Sly's missed field goal as time expired.
Yeah, man.
And that's the thing. When you were talking about Jeremy Chin, those 2 turnovers were on consecutive snaps. Weren't they? Or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One was returned for 17 yards, and I believe the other one was for 25 yards. Yeah. It's crazy. And the fact that a rookie's doing that has to be probably the first time in Carolina Panther history that they returned 2 fumbles for a touchdown.
Aaron, I'm going to go to you for this one. So a game that was not close at all was the Raiders and the Falcons, and, sticking with the NFC South here. And this was just all Atlanta. And, everyone kind of thinks whenever they see Atlanta up with the big lead, like, all right, when are they going to blow it? When are the Raiders starting to come back? But it never happened yesterday. It was just all Atlanta. And Younghoe Koo, 21 fantasy points. He's keeping me alive right now. I'm probably going to get eliminated tonight with the Seahawks and Eagles, but Younghoe Koo, 21 points, and the Falcons took this one 43-6.
Yeah, it was pretty close in the first quarter. It was 6-0, but then, like you said, Younghoe Koo put the team on his back. I think he had 5 or 6 field goals. It must have been that number. The thing is, I see a lot of Alex Smith from his era in Kansas City and Derek Carr. They're kind of around the same person. If, like I said before, if Derek Carr has a lead, it's kind of hard not for him to blow the lead because he has a good running back or whatnot. Like when Smith had Jamal Charles. But the thing is, when he's losing, that's when he gets under pressure and he gets nervous and he creates turnovers and he loses the game for his team. Now, right now, the Raiders are 6-5. And obviously the Chiefs at this point are 10-1 or whatever at this point. They're probably going to win the division. And now the thing I'm wondering is, are the Raiders going to even make it to the playoffs? Because there's so many games. They're obviously a 6-win team, so they're not doing horrible. But you wonder how the rest of the schedule is going to pan out with this team. If you only put 6 points to an Atlanta Falcons team who earlier in the year was an embarrassment to what they used to be, that's alarming for the Raiders.
Yeah, and real quick, I'm just going to read off the Raiders' remaining schedule, and you guys can tell me if you think they're a playoff team. So that next week they play the Jets, then they host the Colts, host the Chargers, host the Dolphins, and travel to Denver. I honestly think they are. They definitely have the potential to win a few of those games.
Like 3 out of the That's a pretty easy schedule, especially since a team like the Jets. I know the Jets have a really horrendous end of the year, and obviously they're already 0-11 now. So it wouldn't be that crazy to see them be the third 0-16 team in history. That's for sure.
Definitely. Oh man, they're just so bad.
Now, moving on here, I want to get everyone's opinion on this and rounding out the NFC South. So the Saints beat the Broncos yesterday, 31-3. They're 9-2 now. Taysom Hill threw for 78 yards, and that didn't even matter because he also ran for a couple scores. But the main storyline here is that Denver did not have a quarterback, like literally did not have a quarterback, had to call up a wide receiver from the practice squad who had like no reps or anything prior to this. He played quarterback at Wake Forest in college, but he was 1-9 for 13 yards and like 1 or 2 interceptions. So that obviously didn't work well. We don't need to do too much analysis here because, like I said, it was just all New Orleans. Latavius Murray, sorry, fantasy owners, for you guys that have Alvin Kamara, but it was Murray's day, 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I want to ask you guys, do you think it was wrong for the NFL to make them play this game? Because we've seen them postpone the Bills and the Titans, and now they keep pushing back the Ravens and the Steelers. And I really believe that it's kind of like, oh, it's just Denver. They're 4-6. They're not going to the playoffs. Whatever. Like, just here you go. Try to win this game. But Denver was, if their record was flipped at 6-4 or 7-4, something like that. If they had 2, 3, 4 more wins, I think the NFL would definitely say, hey, I don't want to bring the money aspect into it, but money is the underlying factor of everything. And, money, playoffs, positioning. I really believe that if Denver had a few more wins, they would push that game back until they had at least one of their quarterbacks back.
Yeah. Here, I agree with you 100%, Kevin. The one thing, just like imagine this, okay? You're waking up. You're the wide receiver on the practice squad. You get a call. Hey, something happened. We need you to play quarterback tomorrow against the New Orleans Saints. Can you just imagine? Sure, he only threw like 3 pass attempts, but that's not the point. And he 2 of those were interceptions. Anyone who didn't have any experience or obviously he played at Wake Forest for 3 years at quarterback. But the thing is how do you get mentally prepared for that? You don't. So I commend him with the the most utmost respect. Everyone's online on social media has been like giving him props and all that because I'd be scared. Like I'd be terrified, especially because they moved me to be a wide receiver for a reason. I guess I wasn't that good at playing quarterback, and now you want me to go back to playing quarterback? So it's just weird.
Yeah, and I think the whole NFL situation with COVID is just a broken system. Like they've moved the Steelers game and the Ravens game like 3 times already. But then when the Broncos are down to a 5th string quarterback, aka practice squad wide receiver as their starter, that game doesn't get moved. And the Colts, 8 players on the COVID list, that game doesn't get moved. And you just see this happen all the time. But I think it's like what Kevin said, the money aspect. People want to see the Ravens taking on the Steelers on prime time. We need to see that game. So it's important to have everybody get healthy. But at the same time, it's like, why haven't you pushed back all these other games? It's a broken system.
We just have like 5 minutes left. So Sarah, real quick, do you agree with what we're saying here?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's all, as much as we hate to say it, it's definitely, money's always the big deciding factor, and definitely also like the hierarchies of all the people at the top with the power. Yeah, I totally agree with what everyone's saying. That's honestly the determinant at the end of the day.
I'm going to stick with you for this one. Going to San Fran and LA, and it was the 49ers who came out on top here 23-20. So again, we were talking about it in the AFC segment, how we can't take the 49ers too lightly next week. Especially because they're 5-6 now. They're starting to get a little bit healthier. And you can never look at it this way, but for what it is worth, the Bills beat the Rams, but the 49ers also beat the Rams. So if you go by that logic, like it's going to be a really close game, especially on primetime in front of everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, when you look at it that way, then we're basically, the Bills and San Fran are basically equal for now until the game starts. And it was a really close game, and the odds were always changing between the two teams throughout the entire game. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Bills take them on. But we just see receiving yards wise, San Francisco had Deebo Samuel with 133 yards, and San Fran's definitely they've got some weapons, and you just don't know. Like, these kinds of games are always back and forth, so we'll have to see how they are going forward.
Now, Aaron and Trevor, I'll go to you guys for the Sunday night game, because this was just all Green Bay. And, Mitch Trubisky kind of let it come back a little bit, but it was just too little too late. And it was more or less just garbage time and garbage stats that he put up. What do you guys make of the Bears? They started out 5-1, and now they've lost 5 in a row, and they're 5-6 now. And they just don't even look like a playoff team. Like, they don't even look like a good team. And like I said, it was just all Green Bay last night.
I think like Allen Robinson is probably the brightest spot, maybe the only bright spot on that offense right now. It'd be nice to have Cohen healthy. That would help out their offense immensely too. But I gotta say, for the quarterback position for the Chicago Bears, they have not had a legendary franchise quarterback since McMahon, and that's saying something. Like, they've been through Rex Grossman, they've been through Mitch Trubisky, and now they're trying to run with Nick Foles. He gets hurt, so they got to throw Trubisky back in again. They've been through Jay Cutler. It's just, for years, maybe even decades, like, what's wrong with the Bears is the quarterback position.
Aaron, do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. The Packers dominate the Bears always, especially in the last 3 decades for sure. So, and that's the problem. For the last 3 decades, think about the 2 quarterbacks who they've had. They've had 2 well-established first ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks in Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers together.
Easily. Yep.
Who have the Bears had? 2 good seasons with Jay Cutler. That's about it. When he had Brandon Marshall as his wide receiver 1, that's probably the only time that Jay Cutler has been good. But the Bears, they need a quarterback bad because Trubisky is not the answer.
I agree.
Funny thing is,
yeah,
I think most Bears fans would say, "Give me Jay Cutler right now," because he was better than Foles and Trubisky.
And let's not forget, they passed on Mahomes.
Yeah, they traded up and still passed on him. And the one thing good about Jay Cutler was that he took him to an NFC Championship game, and that's about it.
All right, a minute left here. So Monday Night Football kicking off in just about 2 hours here. Philadelphia and Seattle. I think Seattle's going to win. Philly's not that good, but I think they're going to keep it close. But I think Seattle's still going to win by a good amount. So I'm going to go Seahawks 31-17 here. Aaron, what do you think?
If the Eagles want to have a close competitive game, start Jalen Hurts for sure. And I think the Seahawks will win by 14, however.
I got Seahawks by a million. Just kidding. Probably Seahawks 31 and Philly 10.
I'm definitely going to go with Seahawks too. I'm going to go 34 to maybe 14.
All right. Well, that will do it. Thank you guys for coming on all semester. And, next time we're on, we're going to be talking about the Super Bowl here and talking about the playoffs and how they wrapped up. Hopefully everything can still go on as planned with COVID. But that'll be it for doing this panel of talking about all the NFL games. So it's been a lot of fun. So thanks for coming on all these times. All right, and next up we'll have Meyer Mikulski talking about NBA free agency. Welcome back to Sports Hour as Meyer Mikulski joins me now for what is likely our final segment of the semester here with Sports Hour. So Meyer, first things first, how are you doing? How was your Thanksgiving break?
It feels good to be back home. It's been so long. I hadn't been home since August, so it feels refreshing to go back to everything I know.
Yeah, that's got to be tough, living so far away because you live in the city, right?
Yes.
So you're going to be there till February until we come back?
Yes.
Yeah, it's got to feel good to be home. So, Meyer, I think the way we'll do this is we'll talk about the top free agent signings, the top trade acquisitions, and we'll talk a little bit about our Knicks, and then we'll just finish up with just, NBA news and rumors in general and how this offseason is shaping up for teams. So first things first, I'm just going to go over the top probably 20 signings here. As we were talking last show how this free agent class wasn't filled with stars. We were saying how a lot of teams to get better, there was that top tier, the top 5 or 10 free agents, those are really highly impact players that can just step in and really help out a team. But for the most part in free agency, a lot of these guys, you're going to have to find 2 or 3 of them to really fill out your team, like the Knicks did. And we'll be talking about that in a few minutes. But, a lot of teams like the Knicks knew that they couldn't just go out and get a superstar that can take their team from 25 wins to 40 wins, and that they had to make a few additional signings and trades to make this offseason work. So with that, let's jump into it. The biggest signing, Brandon Ingram re-signed with the Pelicans, 5 years, over $158 million. Gordon Hayward left the Celtics for the Hornets, 4 years, $120 million. Fred VanVleet, he stayed up north in Toronto, 4 years, $85 million. Davis Bertans, he got a huge contract to stay in Washington, 5 years, $80 million. Joe Harris, another guy that got a large chunk of money. Let's see. So these are 4 and 5. So Bertans and Harris, I would have never thought that these guys would each be cashing in on 80 and $75 million here, but that's what Joe Harris did to stay in Brooklyn, 4 years, $75 million. Bogdanovich, this was interesting throughout the whole offseason. The rumors that he was supposed to go to Milwaukee, and then that there was something with his contract. I'm not even sure how that all went down, but he was back in Sacramento, and then he signed with the Hawks 4 years, $72 million, and then the Kings did not match it. So he is in Atlanta, as is Danilo Gallinari, 3 years, over $61 million. So they get to team up with Trae Young down there. Marcus Morris, he stayed with the Clippers 4 years, $64 million. And then rounding out the top 10 here, Jeremy Grant left Denver for Detroit, 3 years, $60 million. So that was the top 10, Meyer. So just what are your impressions of how this shook up here?
So to go back to what you were talking about with Bogdan Bogdanovic, the reason why that whole situation with Milwaukee didn't work out is because he was a restricted free agent. And had that went through, that could have been a potential tampering situation.
Yeah, so he was supposed to go to Milwaukee, like you just said, and the rumors are now that could have really impacted Giannis's decision next year, because they were saying that if he were to go to Milwaukee, the chances of him staying with the Bucks would have been that much greater. But now that he's in Atlanta, the chances of him going somewhere else are much greater. So I had no idea that Bogdanovic was this impactful.
Yeah, I think essentially now the Bucks are basically what they were, just with Drew Holiday instead of Eric Bledsoe.
And George Hill and like all their draft picks.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you have any other thoughts on these top 10 picks here?
So the Jeremy Grant signing seems interesting because he went from playing for a really good team to going to a really bad team. But I think his thought process was maybe he wants to increase his value so that he could eventually get traded to a contender.
Yeah, if I were him, I would have stayed in Denver. I mean, they were so close last year, but he went to Detroit, and Detroit brought in a ton of big guys. You know, they brought in him, Jahlil Okafor, and who's the other one that I'm blanking on right now?
Mason Plumley.
Mason Plumley, yeah. And he came from the Nuggets too, right?
Yes. And I think the situation with him is the same with Jeremy Grant. He probably signed there to increase his value so that he could eventually land on a contender.
Yeah, that would make sense. So I'm going to finish the top 20 here, and then that'll lead into the trades. So, real quick, did you have any other thoughts on the top 10 signings?
Can you run them back again?
Yeah, so Brandon Ingram stayed in New Orleans, Gordon Hayward to Charlotte, Fred VanVleet stayed in Toronto, Davis Bertans stayed in Washington, Joe Harris stayed in Brooklyn, Bogdanovic went to the Hawks, Marcus Morris stayed with the Clippers, Gallinari went to the Hawks, and then Grant went to Detroit. Oh, and that was actually 9. So Malik Beasley, he re-signed with the Timberwolves 4 years, $59.7 million.
I also really like the Gallinari signing because him, along with Bogdanovic, gives the Hawks more space and it gives them more maturity on that roster. Because most of that team, they're really young. So it's important that they have some veterans to guide them in the right direction.
Yeah, the Hawks, I think they're going to be pretty nice this year. So going through 10 through 20 now, Jordan Clarkson. This was another huge contract, but he was really impactful when he went out to Utah, and they really liked him, and they thought that it was crucial to bring him back. So I understand, but like $51 million, I don't know about that. But it was 4 years, $51.5 million.
Honestly, I don't think that's that bad. For today's era, I don't think it's that bad of a contract.
True, but I feel like he could have signed for much less, you know. Christian Wood, he was another guy that got a huge contract. Kind of came out of nowhere. 3 years, $41 million, left the Pistons for the Rockets. And then Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, he re-signed with the Lakers, 3 years, just over $39 million. DeAnthony Melton re-signed with the Grizzlies, 4 years, $34.6 million. Jay Crowder left the Heat for the Suns, I like this deal for Phoenix because there's a huge trade that we'll be talking about in a few minutes. But he adds some size and depth to that roster. 3 years, $29 million. Derek Favors, he goes back to Utah after spending a year with the Pelicans. 3 years, $29 million. Dario Saric, he re-signed with the Suns. 3 years, $27 million. Jacob Petal, is that how you say it?
Jakob Poeltl.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Jakob Poeltl. He's only 24, a center, restricted free agent. He re-signed with the Spurs, 3 years, a little over $26 million. And then, like we said, Mason Plumley left the Nuggets for the Pistons, 3 years, $25 million. I think that was 20. But while I'm counting, what are your impressions about these signings?
None of them were really that flashy of signings, but they're well needed for what a lot of these teams were missing in their rotation.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That was 19. So the last one was DJ Augustine. He left the Magic for the Bucks. So they essentially got Drew Holiday and DJ Augustine for George Hill and Eric Bledsoe and all those draft picks. So that was the top 20. Just because of our timing, let's move on to the trades, and then if there's time, we can come back and talk about some of these other depth signings. So this has been crazy too. I would say that teams have been impacted more through trades here than free agents. Well, I don't know if I'd say more because there have been a ton of signings, but more of the stars at least have gotten traded than signed. And one of the first ones was that big Phoenix deal that we were just talking about here with the Jay Crowder. I mean, he wasn't part of the deal, but Chris Paul goes out to Phoenix. So now it's Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and now Jay Crowder. So I really like the way the Suns roster is shaping up here.
And don't forget, they also have DeAndre Ayton at center.
Yeah, and him too. So, well, actually, okay, so like the first one on the ESPN trade tracker. So Dennis Schroeder got traded from the Thunder to the Lakers for Danny Green and a first-round pick. And then here's where it gets crazy because then Danny Green was
he got traded to Philadelphia.
Yeah, he got traded to Philadelphia. We'll get there in a sec. Because the next one on the list here is that Suns Thunder trade. So Chris Paul and Abdel Nader went to Phoenix for Kelly Oubre Jr., Ricky Rubio, Ty Jerome, Jalen Lachey, and a 2022 first-round pick. So Oubre got traded from the Thunder out to Golden State. Ricky Rubio got traded back to Minnesota. So, again, that's why I was saying I was trying to think. I'm trying to think of these off the top of my head, but there are just so many moving pieces and so many different like clauses here that I'm just trying to go with.
Hard to keep up. I see what you mean.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think I'm just going to keep reading off this because if I try to do it from memory, I could get a little foggy here. So Portland got Robert Covington for Trevor Ariza and 2 first-round picks, but then Ariza just recently got traded too, right?
Yeah, and I saw a stat that he was the most traded player in NBA history.
Was he really?
Yes.
Wow.
I think he got traded like 6 times in his career or something like that.
Wow. I mean, he is kind of like that classic stereotypical trade asset, right?
Yeah.
You know, he's not a bad player. He's not a great player. He's past his prime, and he's trade-worthy, and you can get some pieces back for him. So let's see here. Just moving up the list. Okay, so here's the Danny Green one. So Danny Green was in Oklahoma City, and then he got sent with Terrence Ferguson to Philadelphia for Al Horford, a second-round pick this year, which turned out to be Theo Maledon, and then a 2025 first-round pick. So what do you think about how Oklahoma City has shaped up their roster this offseason?
I feel like they're a big winner in this offseason because of all the assets they accumulated. They could either use those to trade for a superstar, or they could just use that to draft a potential young star to pair with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So I like what they did this offseason.
And then next on the list here is that Ariza deal that I was talking about, the second one. So he got sent from Houston to Detroit along with the first-round pick this year, which turned out to be Isaiah Stewart for a future first-round pick and then a 2021 second-round pick. And then, again, the Rubio one, like I said, he got sent back to Minnesota along with okay, wait, let's see how. So it was, that's how it went. So it was Ricky Rubio, 2020 first-round pick, which turned out to be Emmanuel Quickley, who was dealt to the Knicks, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here, and then another first-round pick, Jaden McDaniels, in exchange for a first-round pick, which was Alexei
Pokusevski.
Yeah, thank you. So again, so many moving pieces here and so many different parts. I'm just going to try to run through these real quick. Brooklyn got Landry Shamet for Luke Kennard, Justice Patton, and 4 draft picks. And then the Pistons, it was a 3-team deal, so the Pistons got Rodney McGruder and a first-round pick. Philadelphia got Seth Curry for Josh Richardson and a second-round pick. Moving up the list here, Detroit got Dwayne Dedman for Kyrie Thomas and Tony Snell. And then, again, Golden State got Kelly Oubre Jr., which is huge because Klay Thompson tore his ACL, and he's done for the year again. Terrible news. You hate to see it.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking when I saw that.
Yeah. And another – oh, wait, okay, so that wasn't it for Trevor Ariza. So there's one more. So another 3-team deal. So the Mavericks got James Johnson, the Pistons got Delon Wright, and then the Thunder got Trevor Ariza, Justin Jackson, and 2 draft picks. So was that it for Ariza? Was he traded 3 times this offseason?
Yeah, all in the same offseason.
Wow.
But 4 times in 1 year, I believe.
Man. And then moving on here, the Knicks got Amari Spellman, Jacob Evans, and a second-round pick for Ed Davis, who they also acquired from Utah. The Cavaliers got JaVale McGee and a second-round pick from the Lakers for Jordan Bell and Alfonso McKinney. And let's see here. That was pretty much it, except for the main one here, the big one that everyone's talking about. So Milwaukee got Drew Holiday and a second-round pick, which was Sam Merrill. New Orleans got Eric Bledsoe, Steven Adams, a 2024 first-round swap rights from the Bucks, 2025 Bucks first-round pick, 2026 first-round swap with the Bucks, and then 2027 Bucks first-round pick, unprotected. So and then okay, actually it was a 4 teams. So Denver got 2020 first-round pick, which was R.J. Hampton, and then the Thunder got George Hill, Darius Miller, and a first-round pick in 2023, Josh Gray, Kenrich Williams, Zylan Cheatham, and a 2024 Hornets second-round pick, or 2023 Hornets second-round pick, 2024 Wizards second-round pick. So it's just been crazy. All the players, all the draft picks that have been moving around this offseason. But, I think a lot of teams got better here, Myra. Would you agree?
I would say so. But I think some teams also got worse with some of the signings and trades they made as well.
Yeah, so who are some of the teams that you think, who are your top 3 that improved and then got worse?
So right off the bat, my top 3 that improved were the Lakers, the 76ers, and the Hawks.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
In
the Lakers, they just reloaded from that championship team.
And you want me to say who's my worst now too?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the top 3 teams that I feel like got worse were the Pelicans, the Rockets, and I'm going to say the Clippers as well.
Really? Real quick, I want to save time to talk about the Knicks. Why do you say that those are your worst 3 teams? Because the Pelicans, they brought back Ingram. They have Steven Adams, and they got Eric Bledsoe as well. So, I think they improved. So where's your fall off coming from?
So I feel like they got worse because, yes, Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe are quality players, but for one, I don't feel like they fit the timeline of the roster. And 2, I don't feel like they provide spacing for guys like Ingram, who likes to ISO a lot, and guys like Zion as well. I I just don't feel they're good fits for that team.
And then Houston, you don't like because they didn't trade away Westbrook and Harden. Those were the ones that they were tired of the owner. But what's your reasoning here?
I feel like they missed a golden opportunity to trade their stars for some assets and to start their rebuild sooner rather than later.
And then who was your last one?
The Clippers.
And why do you think that they got worse?
So on paper, yes, they look like a title contender, but I still feel like they didn't address their need at point guard, particularly a floor general type point guard. They missed out on an opportunity to sign Rajon Rondo and let him go to the Hawks.
Oh, yeah, he was the other one that went to Atlanta that I was forgetting about. So they got Rajon Rondo, Danilo Gallinari, and Bogdan Bogdanovic.
And they also got Chris Dunn, who I really like too. I think they should actually start him next to Trae Young because they both complement each other. They both make up for each other's weaknesses. Young, he makes up for Dunn's lack of shooting, and Dunn makes up for Young's lack of defense.
Yeah, so I think Atlanta's definitely a team to watch here as we go into this year. Real quick before I forget, they set a start date for the season, correct?
Yes.
And what is that one?
Well, preseason starts December 11th, and the actual season starts on December 22nd.
That's right. Okay. And real quick, just a couple of minutes left. I said at the beginning that we talk about the Knicks as we're both Knicks fans here, and you're in New York right now. So what do you think about the Knicks offseason? Because I think this is exactly what they needed to do based on the players that were available. Because like I was saying, they weren't going to be able to sign star players. I mean, the biggest star that I think was linked to them was Fred VanVleet or Gordon Hayward. But those are just rumors. I don't know if there's any real traction there. So I think that they did the best that they could based on what was out there. We said last time how they drafted Obi Toppin, and they needed guards more than forwards, but at the same time, you're trying to pick the best player available, and that was Obi Toppin as the former player of the year. And, they lost Damian Dotson, Wayne Ellington, Taj Gibson, Mo Harkless, Theo Pinson, and Bobby Portis. But they brought in Nerlens Noel to back up Mitchell Robinson at center. Obi Toppin backs up Julius Randle. At power forward, they recently just signed Michael Kidd Gilchrist. Him and Kevin Knox can play small forward. And then they also signed Austin Rivers and Alec Burks, too, to give them some depth at guard. So, again, I don't want to say I'm really happy because I don't think this team is more than a 40 to 45 win team. I think they're still going to be in the 30s, somewhere around there, and maybe sneak into like the 7 or 8 seed. But I think they're headed in the right direction. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like these signings are much better than the signings they made last offseason because they're veterans that might play in front of the young players for a little bit, but I feel like they complement these young players more, and I don't feel like they're going to hold these guys back like the signs from last year did.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I mean, the Knicks are still the Knicks for now, so hopefully they can start to turn things around because next year's free agent class is going to be pretty nice and a few more superstars that maybe get a few wins here, and free agents will be like, hey, let's go back to New York. Like, let's make New York the Mecca again, So, Meyer, thank you for coming on all throughout the semester, and thank you to everyone at home who have been watching us throughout the semester. Obviously, it's been a crazy semester, a very different semester, but we made it through. And, we had to go through Zoom for our last couple shows here. But honestly, I really like this setup because, Meyer's in New York City right now. I'm still in Fredonia. And all of our other crew members are dispersed throughout the state. And we can still converse, still talk about sports, and, do it in a safe way. So, again, thanks for watching this year. For this semester, we will be back hopefully next semester as long as everything works out. I mean, the plan is we're still supposed to be in school starting February 1st, So hopefully we can get back to the station, but if not, we will come to you live with Zoom again. So thank you again. And I have to finish like this, like every other show. Go Bills.